We are now going to talk about movement patterns of the reef manta ray. And this one is going to be presented by Dr. Lauren Peel. Dr. Lauren Peel is the current project leader for the Save Our Seas Foundation and the Manta Trust of Seychelles. Oh, Manta Trust Seychelles Manta Project. She has a strong interest in understanding the movement ecology of marine megafauna and is passionate about translating this knowledge into conservation action, and awareness in local and global communities. Alongside her work with manta rays, she has studied the movement patterns of white sharks, dolphins, whales, and large fishes in the Seychelles and South Africa. Lauren is currently working as a postdoctoral researcher in Perth, Western Australia, where she is assessing the spatial distribution of flatback turtles in Northern Australia. Lauren, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that, guys. Hi, everyone from Western Australia. So my name's Lauren Peel. I'm the project leader for the Save Our Seas Foundation and Manta Trust Seychelles Manta Ray project. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the multifaceted approach we've been taking to broaden our understanding of the movement patterns of reef manta rays in Seychelles, what we've learned from this so far, and also the implications for our findings on conserving this population and our research moving forward. Jumping straight into it. So the reef manta ray is the large zooplanktivorous elasmobranch. It displays a circumtropical distribution and reaches sizes of up to 5 meters wide from wingtip to wingtip. The charismatic nature of reef manta rays, coupled with their reliable aggregations at numerous sites around the world, have resulted in these animals gaining great popularity within diving and ecotourism communities. However, despite this awareness by the general public of reef manta rays, unfortunately, their populations are in a state of decline. So demand from the traditional Asian medicine market for manta gill rakers, alongside a suite of other anthropogenic factors, have resulted in global manta ray populations declining by about 30% on average over the past 75 years, with losses of as much as 90% being observed in some populations. Now, in response to these declines, reef manta rays have been listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List for Threatened Species, and they've also been included on a number of conventions that aim to...
Can you just, Lauren?
Yep.
Okay, you're back now. We couldn't hear you for a bit there, but it's fine. Keep going.
Okay, sorry. So they've also been included on a number of international conventions that aim to restrict the international trade of these animals. On local and smaller national scales, however, the amount of protection that these animals receive is highly variable, and it's for this reason that the Western Indian Ocean poses a really interesting case for reef manta ray research and conservation. So what you can see from this map is that a number of reef manta ray populations have been identified throughout the Western Indian Ocean. You can see by the manta icons here, but so too have a number of mobulid fisheries that target these animals. Now, given the ease at which manta populations can be targeted and exploited, and the extensive period of time it takes these animals to recover from population loss, given that they reach sexual maturity at a very late age and reproduce with very small numbers of offspring, it's more important than ever that we identify and protect areas of critical habitat for the species to ensure the survival of their populations long into the future. Now, to do this effectively, we need to understand both where the animals are and how their populations are connected. But this is something we know very little about at the moment in the Western Indian Ocean, and this is largely due to how challenging it can be to access these populations and also monitor them in the long term. But that's where the Seychelles Manta Ray project comes in. So I've been leading this project since 2015, and two of our primary questions are how many manta rays are there in Seychelles and where are they in Seychelles? Now, given that we're dealing with 1.35 million kilometers squared of oceans, we decided that a multifaceted approach to try and answer these questions was the best way to ensure the maximum output of our research effort. So we combined acoustic telemetry to look at local scale residency of reef manta rays to island groups, satellite telemetry to look at the movement of individuals throughout Seychelles as a whole and beyond, and also photo identification techniques to look at the size of the population over time and inter-island group movements in order to start compiling these data streams together to broaden our understanding not only of the ecology of this species, but how we can best protect them in Seychelles and also throughout the wider Western Indian Ocean region. So while this is a Seychelles-wide project, the majority of our group to date has focused on the aggregation of manta rays within the Amaranth Island group, shown here. If you're not familiar with this island chain, the islands of the group essentially sit on top of the shallow Amaranth bank, shown here, and our focal study site sits right in the middle. So this is Daros Island and St. Joseph Atoll. They form the heart of the Seychelles Manta Ray Project, through collaboration with the Save Our Seas Foundation's Daros Research Centre. This site was chosen as the core of our project because it was one of the few places we knew we could get reliable reef manta ray sightings almost year round. And just a bit of background on these sites, the two land masses are separated by a 60-metre deep, 1 kilometre wide channel, which actually represents one of the deepest features on the Amaranth bank. And there's a wide range of habitat types available to the fauna living here, all the way from coral reefs to sandy flats to seagrass meadows. So the first part of our research aimed to answer the question of how resident are the reef manta rays that we see at Daros Island to Daros Island. And this is where our acoustic telemetry comes in. So we actually have an acoustic tag here. It's this big. And these devices we deployed on the back of reef manta rays, and they work by transmitting a unique sound signal or a ping, which is transmitted through the water, usually at quite a large distance. And these pings are then picked up by devices called acoustic receivers. So if you imagine that this fish is a tagged manta, that's essentially how the receiver system works. So what we could do is essentially by setting up an acoustic array throughout the Amaranth bank is monitor the movement patterns of our mantas for as long as their tag is on them. So this is what our array looked like. If you see the white circles on this map, those are our individual receivers. So we used a subset of the full array, which is currently sitting at 89 receivers. But the 70 we used for this study, the majority were placed around Daros Island and St. Joseph Atoll with the number in the lagoon. And then we also had a number of receivers placed at key islands throughout the Amaranths, and also one on offshore of Darosh across from this deep channel. So we deployed our 46 tags over 2 deployment periods. We were able to split the deployments roughly equally between males and females, and we used the wingspan of the individuals as a proxy for their life stage, so juvenile, subadult, and adult. We monitored the movement of these animals for 4 years, during which time we recorded 165,000 detections, which we thought was very exciting, but what was more exciting was when we got to see where they were being detected. So the takeaway from this map is twofold. We noticed that our mantas were using all of the Amaranth bank. One individual even made the deep water journey across to Darosh Island, which was very cool. But the majority of our detections were coming from around Daros and St. Joe's. So if we zoom in on this a bit more, the first thing we see is that our mantas aren't entering the lagoon at St. Joseph's, and that aligns with what we saw in the field. We also noticed that we saw a large number of detections in this deep channel between the two land masses, and that corresponds to the feeding activity that we see at the island, with many individuals chain feeding at the same time. And the most detections we recorded was on the receiver next to the cleaning station for manta rays to the north of Daros Island. Now, manta cleaning stations are important not only for the animals having parasites removed from their body, but also socializing with other manta rays. And this result really just went to support how significant not only the cleaning station was to our tagged mantas, but Daros Island and St. Joseph as a whole. So if we consider how often we detected our mantas, we saw that we detected them within the array on an average of 62% of the days that they were tracked. This ranged from as low as 10% to as high as 97%. We also noted that juvenile individuals spent more time on the Amaranth bank where they were detected than adults, and this is likely to do with both thermoregulation, predator aversion, and also food availability reasons. And at the end of it all, 89% of our detections came from within 2.5 kilometre radius of Daros and St. Joseph's. Now, this again reaffirmed how significant we thought that the two locations were to reef manta rays, and also provided support to the new MPAs that had been gazetted for the region, which encompassed the cleaning station, which I was very excited about. But with any acoustic telemetry study, the limitation is that we can only detect animals when they're within the range of our receivers. So we had a lingering question still. Where do our mantas go when they aren't in the Amaranths? Where do they go when they're not at Daros? And that's where our satellite telemetry comes in. So the satellite tags that we used for this component of the Seychelles Manta Ray project are known as mini-pat tags. They work slightly differently to a traditional tag in the sense that rather than communicating directly with a satellite, they log data on board the device. So we deploy them on manta rays for periods of 3 to 6 months. The tag then archives light, depth, and temperature data, and we use that data to estimate where the animal is underwater, essentially using the timing of sunrise and sunset, which I think is a pretty neat way of tracking animals that don't need to come to the surface to breathe. So we've deployed 8 satellite tags on reef manta rays since 2016, 6 on females and 5 on males, shown here in pink and blue. But with any tagging venture, 100% success rates are very rare, and we unfortunately lost 1 of these tags to insufficient data transmission and 2 to complete tag failure. This includes the only tag that we were ever able to deploy at St. Francois Atoll in the Alphonse group, and I persevere to get tags out there still. But at the end of this, we were left with 5 tags deployed at Daros to work with, a whole ocean for our mantas to move through, and then we just had to wait for the data to come in. So while we wait for the data, just to familiarize you with this figure, this map shows the Amaranth's bank to the southwest of Mahe, and also the boundary of the Seychelles EEZ. So if we look at the data that came in for our tags on this map, this is what we see. So there is a lot going on here. Essentially, the squares in each ID shot align with the maps to the respective color. The thing I want you guys to take away from this is that the track paths for all 5 of our individuals never cross the Seychelles EEZ. So our mantas were always in Seychelles, and on top of that, they were always in close proximity to the Amaranth's bank. And additionally, in close proximity to Daros and St. Joseph as well. So we were able to affirm this residency and fidelity to Daros and St. Joseph by combining acoustic data from one of our satellite tagged mantas, who also had an acoustic tag, in the modeling process for her track. So this is essentially what happens when we consider the satellite data alone. We can see quite an elongated track, and that's to do with the geolocation process. But when we incorporate our acoustic data, we see a great restriction in the track length and sort of distribution, again showing the importance of Daros and St. Joe's and the Amaranths more widely to manta rays, supporting the idea of the recently announced marine protected areas and gazetted zones, and also prompting the idea of national level protections given the potential for movement of these animals. Now, lastly, I would quickly want to go through the photo identification component of this project. This is really at the heart of the Seychelles Manta Ray project and is how we conduct our long-term monitoring. So manta rays essentially have fingerprints on their bellies. The spot patterns on manta rays are unique to each individual and they don't change over time. So by collecting photographs of mantas when we see them in the field, we can count how many individuals there are, log when and where we see them, their behavior at the time, their growth rates, and also how they move between the islands of Seychelles. So we've been doing this formally since 2009, although any historic photographs can be included in our data. So please feel free to get in touch if you have any photos of mantas from Seychelles. I would love to see them. We collect our photos primarily through surface and diving-based surveys, but we've also recently been developing a remote camera system that gives us 24/7 visuals of the cleaning station at Daros Island, which has been incredibly useful. In 2016, we started an exciting collaboration with the Island Conservation Society, and that has opened us up to be able to look at the manta rays occurring at St. Francois Atoll and to start building up a really nice database of individuals there. This map gives you an idea of where our sightings have been coming from. So as you've probably expected, the majority for now do come from the Amaranth group, given our focus in recent years in that location. but we are building up a really nice view of individuals at Alphonse. So we've seen 58 unique mantas there so far. And the take-home message from this figure is it's not just the Amaranths and Alphonse. We're seeing mantas all throughout Seychelles. We have incidental records from the Southern Corallines. So if anyone wants an ID photo from there, I would love to see it as well. And we've also confirmed the movement of individuals from the Amaranths to Alphonse as well. So we've had an individual make that journey in just under 2 weeks. And it was exciting to see this connectivity that is existing in the region. It's not just mantas sticking to their island group. They do have the potential to move more widely. So every photograph we can collect of them really helps. And this is just the manta rays in Alphonse in the lagoon, which I'm very excited to hopefully get back there one day. And yeah, just to wrap all of that up, that was a very whirlwind tour of the Seychelles Manta Ray Project, but hopefully this gives you an idea of how we can gather these local and national scale movement perspectives through a multi-technique approach to studying manta rays in Seychelles, considering their conservation at local scales at aggregation sites and as well across their areas of movement. Our tagging data has informed future research directions, particularly with our collaborations through ICS. And I encourage future collaborations and citizen scientists to contribute their photographs to this research. It's really powerful. And these techniques are used throughout the world to monitor manta populations. So yeah, I think my take-home message from that is the Seychelles-wide project is incredibly valuable. We want to keep collecting the photo ID data so we can monitor the state of the population, and to keep in mind that the Seychelles forms part of the wider Indian Ocean region, so that by protecting these animals in Seychelles, there is the benefit to protect the wider Indian Ocean manta ray populations. So with that, I'd just like to thank all of our supporters and the people who have made this work possible. Particularly the Save Our Seas Foundation, Manta Trust, the Seychelles Ministry of Environment, Energy and Climate Change, and Island Conservation and Blue Safari, who have contributed a lot of their time and effort to this. And yeah, with that, I'd like to take any questions if there's time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Lauren, sorry. That was quite interesting. We have a couple of questions. This one, the first one is a bit, it's in the Q&A, if you can have a look. So basically the person wants to know if there are any specific protection status for these manta rays or any type of rays in the waters of Seychelles.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. We are definitely working towards that. I'm not sure, it's been a bit challenging with the state of 2020 to get updates on how that's all going. But yeah, we are looking to generate those protective measures across Seychelles. Would love to chat to you more about it and other things to incorporate. And yeah, we actually don't see many reef manta rays around the inner islands or around Mahe, but we do see occasional sightings of smaller mobulid rays. So I would definitely be encouraging people to incorporate other mobulid species in the same protections that are applied to the mantas moving forward.
All right. Another one is, how about analyzing the gene flow between the manta ray populations?
Yeah, another really good question. So we actually published a paper on that 2 days ago, which was really cool. We have been collecting genetic samples from Seychelles and through the other Manta Trust projects around the world. So that paper is open access, so you can read it anytime you want. We are seeing quite a lot of structure and specific distinct populations for reef manta rays in general. They're not a species that will consistently travel large distances. But yeah, it's definitely something we've done. And I probably don't have time to go into it now, but would love to talk to you about genetics if you have any more questions.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. The last, oh, there's another, oh, wow. That's a few that just came in. Do you track both reef and oceanic mantas, given that you observe both of them while you were doing your research? Do you track both of them?
Oh, I wish I could say yes. So we have seen 260 reef manta rays. We've seen 5 oceanic manta rays. They are very uncommon. So if we ever get the chance to tag one, I would love to. But at this stage, the sighting rate for oceanics throughout the region is just too slim to guarantee a tag going on, unfortunately.
All right. Also, is there potential for you to involve Seychelles wild scientists, let's say, creating new master's project out of your research? And if we do have those people, what are the key questions that they need to be addressing?
Yeah, definitely. The Darrell's Research Centre is really excited and eager to branch out as much as possible and involve Seychelles students and scientists. So definitely get in touch about that and we can chat project ideas. We still have a lot to learn, whether it's fine scale movement patterns, more work looking at connectivity between island groups in Seychelles. I have a lot of questions about how the different lagoon systems throughout the archipelago are used by the animals. For example, they can enter the lagoon at St. Francois, where we see quite a lot, but at St. Joe's it's closed and we don't see any there. So the short answer is yes, and I would love to talk to you.
All right. There are a couple more questions, but I think we are well over our time limit. So what we'll do is we'll keep them in the Q&A, and then you can go through them and you can answer them so that the people who ask them can see the answer to you. I think we've come to an end. We've gone through all our presentations. I would like to thank all of you for coming and be part of this amazing afternoon where we talked about all sorts of wonderful habitats and conservation measures that you all involved with. I think one of the things I was going to ask you a general question, and I think you can just give like a last comment, all of you who presented. So the question I wanted to ask is, you're all doing some amazing work in the marine science field, but how do you feel that your project or your research is beneficial for Seychelles? Or is there a possibility for it to become something that's a bit more widespread instead of just one research or one project? So if you can all just give a little feedback on that, and then we can just close off, and that will be the day.
I'm happy to take the lead if that's okay. So I think from the Seychelles Manta Ray Project side of things, we really are sitting in such a unique part of the Western Indian Ocean. We're fortunate that the mantas we have are so removed from the fishing pressures and anthropogenic pressures that other populations will face. So not only are we able to get information from relatively pristine populations about movement patterns and feeding behaviors and interactions, but we have the opportunity to act before we start seeing any sort of decline. And yeah, as I mentioned in my presentation, we have millions of kilometers squared of oceans to cover and lots of island groups to work through. So there's always a potential to involve other people with this work, which forms part of the global Manta Trust initiative to protect mobulid rays around the world. So I think Seychelles is a very special part of that, and I'm very privileged to be able to be part of this incredible community.
I just want to thank you all for participating again. Thank you all the panelists. Thank you all the participants who were, joined in and listened to all your wonderful projects on how we are monitoring all these critical habitats and what are the conservation measures we are putting in place to make sure that the biodiversity of Seychelles marine landscape remains for many years to come.